What is up, y'all? It's your boy Aniki coming at you with another video. Doing the My Hero Academia review for chapter 302. Those of you who have been here before and those of you who are new, we go page by page. Let's get right into it. We get The Wrong Way to Put Out the Fire, part 2, continuing where we left off from last week. We see that obviously the attack failed from Toya, but this is where, as I mentioned in my last chapter review, Endeavor's like, nope. We're keeping the Shoto away from the rest of the kids. We're not risking this. We're not taking that chance of having any more alleged attacks or attempts on Shoto. We can't risk any of the other kids being more jealous. And one of the things that you can kind of tell Endeavor took to heart was how last chapter Toya was like, I can't imagine wanting to be a hero because I have you for a father. And so in Endeavor's mind, I think he's decided that all he is to his children is the hero Endeavor, and that they don't see him as a person because that's not the environment that they live in, and that's the ambition and the pressure that he put on the kid. So he thinks that by just being in close proximity to him, he will forever be sitting there staring at what he can't be now, thanks to giving him that ambition, and that if he removes himself, maybe Toya will find happiness in other things. We can also see that there's damage on the sleeve, so we know that he actually took the attack. And Ray directly calls out Endeavor and says that she thinks he's just running away. And that's like the decision they made that night. And we fast forward 5 years, and this jump gives us, childhood Toya, and then gives us the soccer scene essentially, or the context for it when they're playing soccer that we see. And we understand that when Endeavor is now walking with them, like, don't look at them, Shoto, your siblings belong to a different world. He's talking about, you're in the world of heroes, they're civilians, you're the one that they might try to take out. You're considered like the creation. And I think to a certain degree, even especially looking at what he says later on in the chapter, that this need for perfection that he had already placed upon Toya, he was like, all right, well, I gotta really double down and get this right with Shoto. And we kind of see that Toya at 13 was very much the emo kid, goth kid that's like rebelling against his parents. Very much went through that phase of, you saw he was online a lot when they came to ask him to go play. He's talking about how his dad's career and what his dad is about is fraudulent, and how their parents are abusive and they're neglectful, and that heroes you have kids. And then like Nazo's like, hey, why don't you go talk to Fuyumi about this stuff? Like, no interest in talking to him about it. And then you see like Toya's freaking out, and he's like, the women in this family are useless, blah blah blah. And I think what this kind of comes down to is that the implication here could be that Toya was like training to be a hero, trying to be good, trying to be valuable. But I think he also, in this moment, Fuyumi went out of her way when they were younger to directly tell him, hey, you're getting injured. Ray is going out of her way to tell him, you're getting hurt by this. This causes you physical pain. You don't need to go about this route. Why don't you try to make friends? And like Toya's like, nope, we live in different worlds, because he's the son of a hero, so he has to be a hero. And I think to a certain degree, like even his more like sexist comments that are towards the slant of, the women being useless, or when you get further along and he starts talking about how the family was poor and that his mom basically had to be sold off, kind of basically just calling her a whore. And it's like, you're guilty for this too, because you played a part and you were complicit in this eugenics program, essentially. And to a certain degree, you can kind of tell that she was aware that that's what was happening. And so there is a bit of a, she did agree to go along with this, but then you can argue, well, look, her family technically, but it's like Ray was a grown woman when she met Endeavor, so the decision to participate in these potential eugenics is technically something that Ray is liable for. And I don't think that's something that we discuss very much in the fandom, but that's just kind of like the reality is that she was like, yeah, like, I know this is what's going to happen. We're going to have a kid, and I'm even cool with having another kid to make sure that the first kid that we had as a eugenics program is comforted by the other eugenics program kid. So there's a certain level of detachment or concern that I think we overlook in regards to Ray in these situations. But she did at least try to convince Toya to stop. And that's when we cut away to the winter when Toya is training. You can see that he's finally got the blue flames. So it's around when he's 13 where his flames start turning blue, starts getting full power, and he's talking about how like he cries all the time. And then he goes, and, he's telling his dad, I can do something amazing. And it's very much like a traditional, normal child would be doing. I'm trying to get the approval of my father. This is something that you would like. I should be able to do this that'll impress you. It's very much like when a kid learns how to do a cartwheel, or like they want to show off. They just really want to impress their parents. And you see Endeavor is completely repulsed by the idea of this happening, so much so that he immediately goes off to go yell at Ray. But I think it's worth noting that, again, this is the flashback that we saw Endeavor having earlier, and I think it was during the war arc where he saw Toya like cleaning at his hair as Dabi was giving his speech, and now he's like, okay, yeah, this, we've come full circle to that reminder, that flashback. And we get more confirmation that like the kids like Fuyumi like sheltering Natsuo while Endeavor's like yelling. His face is kind of drawn similar in style to the Nomu, and it's kind of like a callback to the Pro Hero arc when he's fighting Hood and he's like, you are me from a twisted future, perhaps from my past. And then we see here the several years in the past, about a decade ago, this would be when in this depiction he's similar to the monster that Hood is. And they mention how he was the thing that makes this especially tragic is that Endeavor was so busy yelling at Ray about Toya being injured that during that time period Toya just left, went to Sekoto Peak anyway, and then that's why she says, you didn't go after him. And he's like, I thought it'd be making worse. No, I didn't even know what to say to him. And I think both of these things are true. I think Endeavor's being hard on himself in the regards to the fact that he's just like, no, I didn't know what to say. But I think it's like, what do you do when he's mad at you? When people are mad at you, half the time you go to approach them and they don't want to talk to you, so it just blows up the situation even worse. But in this case, Dabi did just want the attention, so it probably would have worked out if he would have just gone and talked to him and explained to him why it was so dangerous and that he didn't need to do that. But it was just kind of too far gone, because at the end of the day, Toya is the one who took after Endeavor the most. And I think it kind of shows you how the longer and more aware you are and the earlier you get exposed to some of these more toxic second fiddle scenarios within the family or within society, the quicker and the higher the combustion and explosion and the build up and the lash out ends up becoming. Endeavor lashes out at his family, being the hero who hurts his family, to protect other people while trying to become the best hero possible, and is taking it out on them. Meanwhile, Dabi has become the inverse of that, and he's decided to take out his frustration on heroes, on everyone in society that even so much as exists, and to especially make sure to hurt the person that caused him his pain. We get to see the scene depicting when Dabi's tear ducts were burned because he started crying. His eyes lit on fire, and he couldn't stop himself from being on fire. And it kind of looks like the flames just rampaged, and he ran around trying to calm down. You can tell that the whole mountain, he caused a legitimate forest fire. Dabi is a genuine natural disaster. If you think back to the recent battle, this kind of explains why Horikoshi went out of his way to make sure that Deku looped them back to the wasteland, because by having the fight in the wasteland, he doesn't have to depict a bunch of things melting and falling apart. Similar to how, if you remember when Shoto fought during the joint training arc, his flames kicked it up a notch, and when the flames started getting really high, cameras started melting, things like that. So if Dabi is even higher than that, then we have to be detached from, we have to be all the way in the helicopter, we have to be far away. That 4,000 degrees Celsius temperature, close to a red giant temperature, just, it would have been destroying buildings and stuff. So it's kind of for the extra thought that Deku put in to remove Shigaraki from the civilians pays off another dividend, because you don't end up having the city catch on fire because Dobby's right there in the middle of it, throwing out flash fire attacks, burning down buildings left and right. And let's be real here, with the way that carbon fiber and stuff melted, there's a good chance if he's throwing out a flash fire fist and it hits a building, it's just going to melt and fall over, causing a massive amount of damage. We didn't need more of that, in addition to like what was going on with Makia already. So that's things to consider. We see that once again, though, no matter what happens, even now, Endeavor says, having killed Toya, he still feels as if he genuinely killed his own son. I think that's an especially like dark, but kind of noble take, owning that responsibility. Ray kind of talks about how Toya was gone and she was still seeing, hints in the children, but it also said that, I'm pretty sure this is what that inconsistency within the Japanese that was talked about, so we'll figure out which way they decide the timeline is for sure going to be. But regardless, we know that she was seeing hints in the children, poured the water on the face, and then Toya, and then she ends up not able to interact with them at all, period. Fuyumi admits that she could have actually done more, except I think my feelings on Fuyumi are a little complicated, because I think that she's the one who tried her hardest to make things better, but I think she is also, in a lot of ways, the Todoroki family in general is a huge commentary on like the ways that social pressure can really break a family, and all the ways that in the process of trying to heal, they kind of end up still being hurt by it. Like Endeavor, because he screwed up with his oldest son so bad, he ends up hurting Shoto because he needs to justify how hard and how miserably he failed with Toya. Ray, because of everything that's happened with Hero Society, the pressure put on Endeavor, the pressure put on the kids, now breaks, doesn't want to see the kids because it reminds her of the person who's dealing with the Hero Society. And then you have Fuyumi, who's been trying to just be a good supportive sister this entire time. And then you have Natsuo, who talks about how, well, maybe if I would have slugged you, blah, blah, blah. But I think what Natsuo really means is that if ultimately he didn't really talk to... He only sometimes talked to Toya about the stuff, and it kind of seems like he was rather dismissive about it and didn't want to actually hear about it. Couple that with perhaps the fact that in his mind he's like, okay, I was fully aware that that's how Toya felt, and I never brought it up, because at the end of the day he's watching Toya go on air on national television and talk about how he hates heroes, how he wants them to be wiped out, all heroes are fake, etc., etc. All things that Toya sat there and talked to Natsuo about multiple times. And if he had ever given him any assurances in another direction, or if he had ever just even so much as mentioned it to their parents, maybe they could have started to make more progress on what was necessary to get Toya help and get him out of that space that he was in. So that's kind of what I overall see as being implied with Natsuo's plot here, where there's burying it, there's having been buried it, and then resenting having buried the information. There's just simply drowning in your issues, and then there's being the source of it. So there's a lot that goes kind of into the nuances in the past and what's being portrayed here within the family that I personally appreciate for a multitude of reasons. And then Ray goes on to kind of talk about how Shoto was the one who was getting beaten. Shoto was the one who was being mistreated the most, who eventually ended up being neglected while also having been abused, etc. And even through all that, Shoto still ends up being the one that pulls the family together. And then Shoto does something reminiscent of what he says to Deku during the Overhaul arc, showing that not only is his character progression staying consistent, in which he maintains these lessons and holds on to them and then goes to share them on with his friends and people he cares about, but the fact is that he's not only moving to a point where he can sympathize or empathize with Endeavor, but he's capable of reaching out to him in kindness and hope and in love, and hoping that they can progress and then to figure out how to handle this Dabi situation together, instead of trying to handle this in a selfish way, which would have been how Shoto from season 2 would have handled things, similar to Shoto in the final exam arc, where he didn't really take into account how Momo felt about anything. And then now you have him factoring in his entire family into what his plans are going to be, even his father, making progress beyond just holding on to that resentment that he mentioned it during the sports festival. So we're finally getting to really see the journey of the Todoroki family pay off for Shoto specifically, and not just having it be the Endeavor show. And while I do think Endeavor's emphasis is going to be very prominent, it does seem like we're gearing up more and more towards a story beat and an arc where we might have a lot less Deku and more on like what Bakugo, Shoto, Endeavor, Hawks, what all these other characters are trying to do and how they're heading and making way in society going forward with this the fall of hero society, with people being so jaded, with them not wanting or seeing the appeal of heroes the way they used to. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I meant to cover, and I think we are good, so I'll just edit that part out. No. So yeah, let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you enjoyed this chapter, what you have to say. Didn't get confirmation on whether or not Dabi tried to kill Shoto on his birthday or not, but I'm still sticking with that theory. The reality is like Dabi is just an older child who caved into a bunch of social pressures, wanting to be a hero, where I don't even think that I don't think Dabi can be okay in a world where Endeavor is a hero, regardless of whether or not Endeavor spends a lot of time with him, regardless of whether or not him and Ray just get together because it's like they would have just naturally met. I think any world where Dabi gets this quirk and his dad is the number 2 hero, and then Shoto gets to exist and his dad is directly working as a hero, telling him, no, you can't be a hero while that is my legacy and you're my oldest son. I don't think there's a world where Dabi is okay with that, especially with the environment and the kids around him, and especially knowing that his flames like started to become blue. There's kind of like a level of like, oh, you have a better firepower than your Endeavor, but you can't be a hero. Wow, how lame are you? That's so lame. Like nobody, like the thing about like even looking at like what happened with Deku, nobody was like, wow, Deku, you break your bones. Maybe you shouldn't be a hero. They were just like, oh, you should keep using that power and figure out how to not break your bones, but still definitely be a badass and fight crime. Nobody thought of, oh, well, if your quirk hurts you, just sit this out, bro. Like, even Aoyama, like, it's just expected that, like, if you have a quirk, if it has decent potential, that you become, you know, powerful with it, even if it has drawbacks. Even looking at, like, Aoyama's quirk is really good, especially with the support gear. You gotta think, that doesn't just shoot laser beams. It allows him to make energy constructs. The dude made an energy sword with his, like, the naval laser, and then Hagakure light vented. So the fact that he can make constructs now means that there's a lot of potential going forward with that quirk. And the only thing that really makes people feel like it's lame is the fact that it's stuck in his belly button. You slap like an energy hole or an energy portal in his palm, and boom, Aoyama's beloved. So just something to think about. Like, this culture doesn't care if your quirk hurts you. It cares if your quirk can help society, or if your quirk can handle bad guys, or if your quirk's effective, or if you, and regardless of whether or not your quirk is able to do that or not, you're expected to at least consider being a hero. So that's one of my big takeaways from how all this went down, and the fact that Ray asked him directly if you even want to be a hero. It's like, no, he doesn't actually want to be a hero anymore, but he feels like he has to be a hero. And if he's not a hero, then there's no point to him existing. And I don't think that's something that Endeavor directly even states to him. Like, no, neither of his parents tell him, oh, you shouldn't exist because your quirk stops you from being a hero. That's an idea that he gets completely on his own, specifically because of the world that they live within. And that's something that's really scary, is that while yes, Endeavor was trying to debunk his hopes of being a hero because through having the children, he never tried to debunk his value as a person. It's living in a hero-obsessed society that did that to Dabi. And Dabi, recognizing that, is ultimately resentful towards the hero society, and that's why he goes so far to destroy it. That's my Silver General of the League of Villains. Now, let me know what you guys think down below. If you enjoyed anything I had to say, make sure you like and subscribe. Come back next week, Sunday, when we'll have the Church of MHA. Keep the conversations rolling. That's all I got to say today. It's your boy, Aniki, and I'm out.